Welcome back, Dragon Ballers, to Get the Mic. This is the only show where your host on the left, Owl,
And your host on the right, Brock.
dissect fiction for its mythological significance. In this episode, we're still talking about Dragon Ball, as usual, and we are specifically talking about episode 64, The Last of Mercenary Tao, or The Final Tao Pai Pai in the direct translation. We're happy to be here with you guys. We hope you give us a subscribe, a like if you like what you hear. Comment if you disagree. Just want to front load this as well as back in this in case anyone's watching that isn't subscribed, which I know some of you are based on our analytics. So please subscribe. Anything else you had to say, Brock, before we get into the episode?
No, I think that I'm very excited to talk about this episode. I think it might be my favorite episode thus far on my rewatch. Might be my favorite episode of Dragon Ball, period, by what I can remember. So
It's pretty glorious.
it is extremely concise with its themes. It's exactly what I want out of Dragon Ball.
All right, well, let's get into it. Don't want to wait too much longer. So, we start off the episode with Tao sprinting up Korin's tower. He complains about the length of the trip, which let's go ahead and address that. His complaints about the length of the trip and what Goku and Tao are both doing by climbing that Korin's towers, right? They're elevating their spirit. They're focusing their focus. They're narrowing their focus into this single point.
Right, and Tao's complaining about how long it takes because in his mind he's already achieved this thing, right? He thinks that his orientation is the best orientation, and so he's like, "Oh, I got to go through this just to get this stupid sacred water so that I can have my strength arbitrarily improved," right?
Right. And it's the quick way to do it, right? Let me get a quick go and done. And he has that arrogance to believe that that is actually the case.
Right.
And that his map, which we'll get into later about his map, is the one to follow.
Exactly.
Meanwhile, at the base of the tower, Appa asks Goku if it's okay to let Tao drink the super spirit water. Goku tells Appa that he'll eat food. That's it.
That's his
He'll
response.
eat food.
Well, he asks him, "Oh, you must have some secret in store, right?" And he
Mhm.
says, "I'll eat food." And that's
so
literally,
he-
and I love that way that Goku is very short and direct in that way, where he'll just say like the most concise version of the thing. He just says, "I will nourish myself."
Oh, we're close to the line with this guy soon, which is one of our favorite lines of the dub ever.
Oh, it's amazing.
So it's
Yes,
in that
it's
same
exactly
spirit.
like that.
Yeah. And that's what Goku says here. I'll eat food. And so inside the tent, Goku gorges on haunches of meat as Appa watches, worrying about Tao so much that he's unable to eat. Now, I do want to say before we continue, the super spirit water and why it's even called that, to reiterate, is because that the super spirit is one that can adapt other spirits and map itself and map other spirits onto itself.
Right, it's the wisdom that will be gained from the superordinate spirit.
Mm-hmm. And that's why it's super spirit water.
Exactly, and Korin specifically tells Goku, right? He says, "No, it's called the super spirit water."
Yes. And Goku knows that Tao won't be able to do that just by drinking the water itself, because that's not the point of it. It's not a logical thing that he's doing. And so he's not worried about it, but Appa is. So Goku then states that he's going to sleep. And at night, he dreams of Bulma's panties. And he has a laugh about that whole encounter where he removes her panties and where Master Roshi sees her.
When she's revealed to him, right?
Yes.
I really, really like this part of the episode because we had mentioned before that there was Goku needing to be able to integrate eating well and moving well and resting well, right? And whenever Goku needed to figure out how to rest well in order to grasp Korin, in the middle of the night, he got a vision from Bulma, essentially. He stirs awake
iteration of that, yeah.
and gazes into the water and sees the wisdom that he needs in Bulma's actions. And so here we see as he's sleeping and allowing Tao to prepare himself for this fight, right? What he's doing is he's laughing at the idea of the unknown, or you could say the revelation of what is not yet known, because we see whenever he removes Bulma's panties in the dream, when he first saw it, his eyes were wide open and the sun was hitting him and he was enlightened and he was shocked,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then we see the revelation of Bulma whenever she revealed herself to Master Roshi afterwards. And then in his sleep, he says, "It's okay, Bulma. You don't need to have a PP." And then like Upa sees that he says that in his sleep, and he's like, "What could he possibly be dreaming about?" But I think it's to say that Goku has the proper orientation towards the unknown and towards having his vulnerability revealed.
Well, because of his acceptance of the unknown's integration, right, which is in the form of Bulma when it happens this time and last night with the wisdom that she imparts by interacting herself in her own instantiation, which she is that archetypal feminine, right? That is that chaotic yang, I think.
Right.
Um, so having that, right, it is Goku's acceptance of that that allows him to. What were you saying actually? What were you saying right before that?
Well, it's to say that no matter the level of malice that's going to come back down that tower, Goku can rest easy to integrate the unknown and
Oh,
he's
you were saying, I remember now. You were like, he has the proper attitude towards the unknown.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's that acceptance of the knowledge that the unknown brings and the integration of it and the not shying away from it because Goku faces things forthrightly that emboldens his spirit such that he doesn't have to be afraid.
Well, I also want to point out, usually in a dream like this, someone who has anxiety would dream about themselves being naked in a public situation and being embarrassed, right? Where the way that they are is revealed to the world and they do not want to be judged. But Goku is laughing in his dreams at the idea of that revelation of being revealed and being vulnerable. And that is to say that he has the proper spirit and the proper orientation so that he can rest well.
Well, I think too that the laughter is a next step in that evolution, and later on we'll hear, way later on in Z, where we'll hear Piccolo tell Gohan something along the lines of "You'll laugh at your fears once you know who you really are,"
Hmm.
and Goku here in the initial concept, like he doesn't understand what's going on with Bulma, right? And he's first like kind of appalled and freaked out by it, right? And but now he's able to look back on it and actually see the humor in the situation. He understands why that situation was funny because he was able to map spirits with Korin. And because he's able to understand how Bulma would be seen by Roshi if he was mapped on if she was mapped onto him. Now he understands too that revelation and how it is that that situation was both humorous and enlightening and pretty significant
Right.
for
The humor
Goku's
definitely lies in being
character.
able to understand that other perspective, right? And seeing the impact of the enlightenment across more than just one person, let's say.
Right, and now Goku has such a mastery of the distinction between masculine and feminine. He didn't pat Upa's
Right.
privates, let's say. And it's funny because later on we'll see someone who does something in that spirit. But yeah, Goku's distinction now is pretty solid, and so now he's able to laugh at that hierarchy that he's already passed and understand the things that were happening around him.
I think a good way of putting it is that Goku has fully integrated the potential of the unknown that Bulma is representative for him and represented for him from the beginning until we got to this point.
I would also say that it's really the last time Goku thinks about this.
Hmm.
It's really to say that he's gleaned all the wisdom he can from that situation now that he understands all the sides of it instead of just his own.
Right.
I think that's good. So let's sum it off there. So, we see back at Kame House, Roshi reads a book of mystical philosophy. So let's just stop there. Obviously, he's embodying that spiritual father, right?
Right.
By reading this. And what he's actually reading, which we'll find out in just a minute, makes it even a deeper level of analysis. So,
Right. It's a continuation of that joke. Because he says to himself, he says, "Oh, it's so mysterious and deep," as he's looking into
yes,
this book of mystical Oriental philosophy,
he's really in it.
and it's it's ironic because, we see here whenever it's revealed what he's looking at, that inside the book, of course, is those lewd depictions. And so it's a reversal of that joke, right? Where Goku's having that dream that it has to do with his integration of the feminine spirit. And we see that Roshi is reading a book of mystical philosophy, and inside of it is his relationship to the feminine
And
spirit.
his lack, like, yeah, and I know exactly what you're saying. His lack of integration with that is what he needs. So within the book of mystical philosophy, that's what he'll find, right? It's kind of the idea of looking in the darkest place in the forest for what you seek most.
Hmm.
And so Roshi reading that and like succumbing to those urges, and the fact too that the feminine mystique, right, that represents that unknown is what he's trying to integrate with, like Goku was. He's just not doing it the
Right, the
proper
deep
way.
and mysterious, right?
Yes, the deep and mysterious, which is it's all true. And so Bulma then rushes out to show him, and I guess we kind of skipped over what Bulma's doing, but that's okay. Bulma rushes out to show him that she's finished building a new dragon radar. Unfazed by Roshi staring at her breast, she uses the radar, and it emits a loud sound. Roshi falls and scatters the lewd pictures everywhere that we were just talking about, and they were hidden in the mystical philosophy book. Roshi comments that it's strange for Bulma to build something that doesn't work, and she says that it's jammed by something. Meanwhile, Red Ribbon HQ, we get to see what is jamming it, because Red and Black discuss their plans to use the jammer until Tao returns with the Dragon Ball,
Hmm.
so that no one else can find the Dragon Balls. So let's first, well, I guess it's pretty much there. We don't really, there's not too much to talk about with Bulma besides the fact that the archetypal feminine is going to, um, let's say, sprout forth those seeds of opportunity for the heroic spirits around. And so this here is the new, and this is now 3 dragon radars. There should be, right? Or 2?
I'm not
3.
sure.
Red Ribbon has 1.
Hmm.
Goku has 1. She's made a third.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's 3 now. And so it's another little guide, right, to map out that wisdom in the world.
Right. So I think that's a good way to contextualize what's going on with it being jammed, right? Because there's always this analog between what's going on with Goku and what's going on either at Kame House or with Bulma in general. And we see as Goku constantly is referring back to Bulma as something in his unconscious, right? But there's this really interesting thing where we see that the Red Ribbon headquarters has a signal that they're sending out that's jamming other people's ability to find the Dragon Balls, and they also say, if we do this, then we can't see them either. And they're like, well, it's fine. We'll just wait until Tao gets back with them, and then we'll, turn the jammer off so that people can find Dragon Balls again once it's advantageous to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's very much when we talked about this a bit before. You had said it's like poisoning the well, because I kind of see this as like, I think of it like propaganda in a sense, because the Dragon Radar is that map that you can use to find those seeds of wisdom out there in the world and gather them up and be able to bring forth your potential. And what he's done is he's made it so that not only can nobody else see it, but he can't see where it is either. And he's like, he is making it so that it is unclear to people who are searching for that wisdom that it's even there to begin with.
Right, I agree with all of that. The muddying the waters, the poisoning the well, right? That's kind of what we talked about in our first go around. Um,
Hmm.
but I also wanted to say, and this was something I was thinking about earlier, that Red himself is almost like this spirit of enviousness, right? He envies, and we're gonna see in a couple episodes what exactly I'm talking about. But in this instance, right, this this spirit, this adversarial envious spirit, is able to jam the wisdom, because that, if everything is based on relative, let's say, envious nature, then nothing means anything, right? It's almost a a leveling of the playing field.
Right, just to say that everything really is a power dynamic.
Yes, and that's how Red operates, right?
Hmm.
Is and that's and we're gonna
And
get
that's,
into
yeah, and
more
we'll
of
get
that.
into why he needs the
We're
Dragon
gonna
Balls.
get more
But
into
yeah,
that.
so it's interesting that it does it this way, because as that's happening, we see that Roshi has his own map here,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it is a
Yes.
book of mystical philosophy with with the pictures of lewd women. And so it's funny because also whenever he stares at Bulma's breasts whenever she comes up to show him the radar, she doesn't actually react like she normally does. She doesn't slap him down or
That's
anything.
right. Yeah, yeah.
She just she looks annoyed and then she turns on the radar and it disarms him, so to speak. And so we're starting to see a little bit more of that integration on Bulma's side as well.
Mm-hmm. She's finally figuring out the lessons that she needed to learn when she was confronting Blue.
Right.
And it was her confronting Blue and Goku, but a lot of her. It
And
was a
getting the
lot of
gem,
her.
right?
Yeah, and
The
definitely
jewel
getting the
that
gem.
I guess is we're never gonna bring up again.
Doesn't she? Didn't she give it to Roshi for the lost sub?
Yes, and then it went to launch, and then it went away with launch, and
And
it
it came back.
presumably came back, but then we don't see
Oh,
it
okay.
anymore,
Yeah,
right?
I think that's all we
So it's
see.
basically been,
Yeah.
you could say it's been
Well, that
internalized now.
I would say for a logical explanation
Yeah.
is how they all live on Kame House forever and ever with like nothing, no production. Um. Anyways, so let's go ahead and move on then. I would say, right?
Hmm.
I think we covered that pretty well. So Tao again, he is still climbing the tower, but he's now reached the top. And the first thing he does when he's in the bottommost room is he looks in one of the pots that Goku looked into. And it's that water at the top, right? That wisdom that can be found at the top. He peers into it, and what does he see but a vision of the people he's killed? Blue, the tailor, Bora,
Bora,
yeah, Bora. And Korin asks if he's come here to realize the depths of his transgressions. Tao demands immediately that he give him the super spirit water, and Korin tells him to face away while he procures the water. It's a sacred ritual, which it's not, and Korin's just having a jolly at him. So Korin scoops water into a cup, just regular water, picks up his nose, and drops a cat booger into the water. Upon receiving the cup, Tao is suspicious and tries using his Dodonpa on a pillar, saying that once he's drunk the water, he should be able to destroy it. He then notices, in the pot of water, that Upa is standing right at the base of the tower. He says that he'll throw the pot onto him if the water doesn't work. When he drinks it and uses the Dodonpa again, the pillar is cracked but not destroyed. To prevent him from throwing the pot, though, Korin uses his staff to knock the pillar down. Then Korin summons a black nimbus, telling Tao will save him energy for the big fight against Goku. And so here we see a lot of Tao's interaction, and and this is actually the only real interaction we see between Korin and Tao. But how this dynamic fits and how Tao is consistently making the wrong decisions. So the first thing we see, I guess, we'll start in that pot, those pots of water, the people he's killed, right?
right? It's interesting because whenever you come up with a guilty conscience, let's say, that would be the reflection that you get whenever you've entered into this sort of space because that is the first step, right? You need to be able to come to terms with your transgressions before you can move any further in that spiritual hierarchy.
Well, particularly that he's killed people, right? And that shows a lack of being able to map another person's spirit onto yourself.
Right. You don't see them as people, but as tools or as obstacles.
Precisely. And so that's the first thing that Tao has to get rid of in order to take the next step. But it's right here in front of him. Korin even asks him if he's come here to do that. He offers him the chance to. And it's not like later on we won't see villains that do change and turn to good, let's say. But Tao here he's like, no, give me the water. And so Korin immediately decides to start, let's say, having a go at him.
Right. So there's an interplay between them that I think is really funny, right? What he does is he tells him that he doesn't let anyone see him procure it. So face away
Mm-hmm.
and I'll get it for you. And he tells him
And
to sit up.
sit up
Yeah.
straight, right?
And Tao is not sitting up straight, right? So he says, I told you to sit up straight. And so even in the smallest thing that Korin can ask from him, he is adversarial, right? He shows that he is opposed to doing what he's told as a spirit, right? And so Korin gives him the joke water, so to speak.
Yeah.
Now
The bunk water.
Tao is very suspicious of him because Tao is mapping onto him what he deserves to get. He knows that the way that he's acting is going to beget the reaction that he needs to be wary of because he can't really read anything out of Corin. Corin is kind of a blank slate to
Well,
him.
I was gonna say he's mapping himself onto others such that he believes the malice that's within himself is within everyone, and that they'll take the advantage to exploit it if they had the power to do so, because that's what he would do.
Yes, and also he recognizes that his mode of being would beget that from other people. And
Does he
so,
recognize that?
um, I would say yes, as part of his willfulness in his endeavor here, right? I think it's somewhat necessary to recognize that you're acting in a way which would cause people to react to you in an untrustworthy manner. So he's expecting because he
Mhm.
came in here and immediately choked Corin, right? And it's like I kind of see it as a recognition that he he is doing something that is against uh the people that he interacts with, right? And so it's sort of because Corin would has not given him necessarily a reason not to trust him, right? He's just been very amicable with him. But I also agree with that where it does have to do with that ability to take yourself out of the equation and to see the other person as truly who they are and not as an extension of yourself or as a representation of yourself, right? And so because of that, he is suspicious and yet at the same time can't figure the game out.
Right, and so he drinks the water. Well, not yet.
So at
Once
first,
he makes this deal with Corin, right?
right,
Like,
because he doesn't trust him, he says, "Well
mhm,
then, I'll kill the kid if this doesn't make me stronger." And he creates a test case, right, where he says he shoots his the Donpa at the pillar
which he wasn't able to destroy before.
and it still doesn't destroy it. And then he it's so funny, he says to Corin, he says, "This super spirit water will make me strong enough to be able to destroy that pillar." And Corin says, "Oh, you sure are smart." And so it's more of that play where remember when Goku first came up, he's like, "You're not that bright, are you?" It's an inversion because that's actually a compliment, right? It's that the more empty your head is, the more room there is to fill it with dreams idea.
Ah, yes,
And
yes.
so calling Tao smart, like calling him intellectual, is actually an insult that Tao doesn't understand.
Mhm,
So it's
yeah,
above Tao's head. Um,
yes.
and so, of course, Tao wanting to shoot the pillar is symbolic of what his mode of being, what he thinks his mode of being should beget for him, which is to say that he thinks that if he gets this super spirit water, right, then he will be able to shoot the tower and be able to destroy the tower as such, and that his extension of his spirit is superordinate to the entire concept of bettering yourself.
Well, and that's to say that with the ability to, because he doesn't understand what the super spirit water actually does.
Right.
So he's thinking that if he's able to um instantiate his malice into the world in such a way that would be more potent, or more, it would be more susceptible to the advert, or to the heroic spirit, let's say. So what he does is he shoots this ancestral, the pole, right, that holds up Corn's tower, the tower itself. He shoots the pillar because that stacking, right, and that hierarchy, its elevation itself, what you were saying, is
Right.
instantiated in the actual text, because we see the whole thing is, can my malice now destroy the idea of betterment?
Exactly. And so if you were to believe that your orientation was the right orientation and could even strike down what Corin tells him is a pillar made from heaven stone, right?
Mhm.
It's a heavenly pillar. And so in this act, he thinks if I got any stronger, I would be able to essentially cast down heaven, right? I would
Yes.
be stronger than the highest interpretation of what the highest mode of being would even be. And so it's funny because whenever Corin tells him, "Oh, you must be pretty smart," it's like, yeah, you're pretty Luciferian in that sense, right? Very
Yeah.
intellectual.
Yeah. Very sciencism. A
Hmm.
sciencism ist. Sciencismist?
Yeah, scientismist.
Scientism. Oh, I like the tism.
Very
All right,
scientistic.
so there we go. So yeah, he shoots the tower like we said. It doesn't work, but Korin uses his staff to knock the pillar down so that he doesn't kill Upa, right? And it's to say that Korin is willing to have him think that his malice is so potent that it's able to do that, because Korin can change the elevation of his own tower, right? He
Right.
has that hermit energy to do so, and so he can knock over the pillar. And by doing so, he fools Tal into thinking that he is now strong enough to defeat Goku,
Right.
and so summons the black cloud, which the black nimbus. We do need to talk about how specifically it is Tao that rides this, and Tao can ride this, right?
And specifically that it's shown right after he does this and believes that his spirit
Yes.
can bring the tower down.
It's now that he's oriented in that way.
when you believe that your spirit is that powerful, you are on a path to self-destruction.
Hmm.
And
A
he
path downward.
yes, a fall you could say.
Yes. And so his time in Corn Tower is shortly over as he takes that black nimbus down. Now, Corrin also tells him that it'll save him energy for the big fight, right? And
Mhm.
that's to say that that idea that taking this malice and putting it out in the world is as a path to power is a, let's say, easy but really reckless way of being, mode of being. And so his way of riding on the nimbus, the black nimbus, is because he's oriented in directly that path. It's easy to go down, right? It's easy to um drag other spirits down with you
Right.
to hell.
And that's exactly where he's oriented, right? He has oriented himself against the heavens, right? And is being cast straight down to the earth, which is like, okay, well if it's all just power dynamics, go ahead.
Go on down, be a beast, in the
Yeah.
bestial lower worlds, right? And so he goes all the way down. And that energy to save him for the big fight, I think that's instantiated here because it would take for Tao to properly climb down the tower again, it would not be fitting for where Tao's spirit has accumulated his malice at this point.
Right. And I should point out, he is able to crack the pillar, right? He has gotten stronger just by drinking the water, even though the water does nothing. It's that placebo effect, which is that just by the confidence that he gains that he would be stronger for any reason, he's able to strengthen his spirit in that sense.
Well, I was thinking too that his interaction with um the pillar being having that instantiation that he now has the ability to knock it over, right? And that, and it's kind of what you were saying, but I think what what he does with Corin and Corin's ability to kind of misdirect him and him being able to like banter back, I think that's also strengthened his path. Also narrowing his focus to get here in the first place and elevating his aim in the beginning to betterment, to be better, because that's a holy endeavor, whether you're whatever his motivation behind it is, right? That's all strengthened him along the way.
Right. It kind of goes along with this Taoist saying that says, when the wrong man uses the right means work in the wrong way.
Yeah.
And it is to say that, yeah, he did become stronger by climbing the tower, and Corin recognizes that he would become stronger by climbing down the tower in the proper way.
Yes. If he was to reorient himself, right? And do that same thing to focus himself on betterment instead, climbing down would be a strengthening thing. But instead, Corrin gives him this out, which he takes, right?
He appeals to his impatience, right?
Hmm. And the out is taken, and he starts going down to hell, let's say. So then we cut back to Kame House, where Bulma is building a radar that won't be jammed. She says that she's worried about Goku, and Roshi tells her not to worry. He creeps on her and then gets slapped. At the base of the tower, though, Goku says he feels great after the food and rest. Let's go ahead and pause there, though, and talk about Kame House real quick. So here, the radar that won't be jammed. This again is that elevated feminine spirit, which can then produce a map for in a pattern, let's say, because Mother Nature and the universe itself creates these patterns that can be mapped, right?
Right.
And so that's what Bulma is doing and allowing this map to happen above the fray of Red's poison. of the poisoning of the well.
Right. That is what she needs to be able to do, but she's not quite there yet. There's something that she needs to be able to integrate before she can create a map that won't be jammed by that malicious intent of someone like Red, right?
Yes, and we'll see what that is. Just a few minutes. But right, and so we're kind of introduced to that idea. Roshi telling her not to worry, right? He doesn't have a he doesn't actually know what's happening with Tao. We'll see how he reacts to that later, but he's not worried about Goku because he knows that Goku is oriented in that way and that he'll be fine, right?
Right. It's like Upa, right? Upa didn't want to eat because he was worried and he was struggling with being able
Is
to
that
rest
rest
well,
well?
right?
Yeah.
And so Roshi's telling her to rest well. He's saying, don't worry, right? Because Goku wasn't worried because the worry didn't serve anything higher,
Hmm.
right? And so he's doing the same thing. He imparts the mystical philosophy and then he creeps on her and then he gets slapped, right? And so he's trying to give something to Bulma by doing that, right?
Yes, he's sending out signals for sure and wisdom that's not necessarily being ignored because we do see some progression. But then at the base of the tower, Goku says that he feels great after the food and rest. He's eaten well, he's rested well. Now he knows. Then Upa worries about the super spirit water, but Goku reveals to him that it was just regular water all along. On the tower, and this is to say that Goku is not able to articulate the wisdom that he's learned, but he's able to embody it. And so when he explains it to Upa, it doesn't really make sense to him. Upa's confused at that too.
Right. Upa has no concept of this, and that's sort of how we see the difference between Upa and Goku's spirits, where Upa, it's literally an embodied knowing. Upa could not know what Goku knows because he has not gone through what Goku's gone through. And so this is something that, being an embodied wisdom, um, Goku simply has to act out what he's learned from Korin, which is that he needs to prepare himself properly for the unknown.
Hmm. He needs to be perceptive or receptive to the unknown in the
Right.
proper way. Um, and and right, and by doing so, we've established all that. And so Upa's a little confused, but Goku knows what he's doing as the embodiment of this spirit. And so on the tower, Korin watches as down below, Tao streaks towards the ground on the black cloud. He comments that he couldn't allow him to get any stronger by climbing down, and we've actually
Hmm.
already addressed that. I do like the joy that Korin gets from watching him like go down this way, right?
Right.
It's almost to say that that natural delineation between righteous and wicked spirits, right? There's some joy in seeing the latter fail and the former succeed.
Definitely. Yeah. I like that he laughs to himself, right? Um, as he
Well, there's
dismisses
no
the
one else
cloud,
up there.
right?
Yeah.
He finds humor, you could say. And the humor is sort of an aspect of it, right? Because we see that the way that Corin really is expresses itself in doing this, right? And what he does is he dismisses the cloud altogether and says, "And now you're on your own," and just leaves him to fall of his own accord to the ground.
And it is the part of that fall, right? And Corn's just helped him along the way, but now he's just falling the rest of the way, right?
And now it's purely just him, right?
Hmm.
The black cloud has no more use for him because it's sort of to say now you're on your own path. And I like that too. We haven't necessarily talked too much about this, but the idea that Corrin is up here, he's above the clouds, right? And he can give
He
people
can.
clouds,
Well, we
right?
haven't seen that yet. I think that's why, right?
Well, he gave him the black cloud.
Yeah, but we haven't seen the other clouds yet. But
Right,
yeah, he can
but
give
that
people the
idea,
black cloud. Yeah, yeah.
but
No,
but
no,
but that
right.
he's a master of
Well,
paths,
that he's
right? Because
super
he's up
ordinary
there at
above it.
the
Yeah.
well, I just want to say like because he's up there at that Axis Mundi sort of point, right? And you see the four holes in the bottom of the tower, so it's like he is at that point where he's over the paths that people can take,
Well, and the thing about
and
too.
so he's able to dismiss the black cloud because the path, let's say, I don't want to say the path belongs to him, but rather he is the master of the ability to map out that path because of his position in the world, right?
Well, that's something that is in what we'll see later. He establishes with Goku,
Hmm.
but that's not wisdom that we've learned yet from him. We do know that he has the ability to give those clouds, but I wanted to say too that think about where Corrin is. Like the whole tower is a path upward, right? And so of course, the further that path ascends, he becomes superordinate above all paths, right? And that's kind
Right.
of what you were saying.
Right. It's that idea, that he's there at the center, and he's above the whole world, so he's got this
Oh, what I was
perspective so
gonna
that
say,
he can
yeah.
see the proper
Well, he
path to
can
go where
see,
someone wants, and he
and
knows the proper path for him, right?
the tower itself is the greatest path that we see in Dragon Ball, in the physical like world of Dragon Ball, the Dragon
Right.
world, let's say,
Right.
as far as we know for now. It,
Yes.
but it's part of even
But
the
that's
next
why we
episode.
see the depiction of Tao riding the black cloud
Hmm.
along the tower down, right? It's like
Yeah.
depicted that way, so it shows him going down the tower, even though he's riding the cloud.
Yep. Um, and so he does fall to the ground, and Goku and Upa watch him as he crashes. Tao curses Korin, saying that if he ever gets back up to that cat, I'll kill him. And Goku tells Upa that this time he'll avenge his father for sure. Right? Goku's ready to have his revenge now. Like, is it? You want to look? Okay. He's ready to have his revenge now. Well, I will say I've been checking every time I switch it. So we're about to switch. Goku, Goku Goku tells him that he'll avenge his father, meaning that he's ready for that revenge. He's ready to take he's ready to dismantle this spirit that is Tao, right? He understands it, and he doesn't understand it quite yet, but he knows he has the tools by which he can understand it, and he's ready to tackle the obstacle.
Right. He has spent his time properly so that he can be fully present, let's say, for this fight.
Mm-hmm. And so he is, and we're gonna see the fight begin. So, Tao strikes, being the aggressor here after having the super spirit water, and appears to have the upper hand on Goku, pummeling him and spiking him down onto the ground. He then drops down onto Goku with a knee, seemingly killing him. Tao states that by the time he realized how cruel a professional killer could be, it was already too late. Goku then rises, casually dusting himself off, and compliments Tao for his assault. He then reveals he's figured him out and rushes in for the counterattack. So this is where Goku
Hmm.
now understands Tao and can then use his knowledge and his map of Tao against him.
Right, and we see him mapping him, right? That first punch that Tao brings in, it zooms in on
Yeah.
Goku's eye, and he watches the punch land. And so we're clued into what Goku's doing as he takes this beating, and it's pretty brutal. We see Upa's perspective, and he's just crushed
It's
because
all
it really
malice, yeah.
does look like he's dead. And he does this thing where he launches himself up in the air, and then he comes down onto him with a single point, right? Which we've seen Tao do before. And so he thinks that this surely, right, focusing all of himself into that single point from above because he considers himself to be superordinate now. He's fooled himself in that sense, right? Um, he thinks that that would kill Goku, and he says it out loud. He says that Goku didn't understand this kind of malice,
Well, and that the pure malice he's emitting is enough to kill him.
right?
And he's saying it was too late for him to understand it. But really, Goku had already mapped it at this point. And so he's sitting there, he gets up, does all that, right? And then he rushes in for the counterattack, which is pretty brutal itself because he returns Tao's attacks against him. And here we get the famous cutscene we see from Goku where he jumps on Tao's shoulders, beats him up, and then kicks him, right? He shows Tao that he studied his moves and has perfected them for himself, right? He's mapped malice and can now integrate malice into the actions he is taking. On the tower, Korin watches astounded. Tao realizes that at this rate he'll certainly be defeated and throws himself at Goku's mercy, claiming that he'll never do any bad again. Goku looks to Upa for the proper response, and Tao pulls out a grenade as he's looking, laughing that he's fooled him again. He throws the grenade at them and launches himself in the air, but this time Goku is ready and kicks the grenade back at him. Blowing up, Tao is obliterated.
I love the way that this plays out, right? Because as Tao throws himself at his mercy and tries to trick him and manipulate the heroic spirit in that sense, Goku,
He knows the weakness of the heroic. He knows that that Malice has
right.
the knowledge of the weakness of the
It
heroic.
shows truly how malicious he is because he takes it that step even further and that he's aware of the heroic spirit in that sense. But then Goku looks to Upa to see what the proper reaction to this would be. He doesn't just forgive him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is Goku showing that he really has I don't want to say interpreted. He's integrated that learning from Korin because he sees Tao through Upa's eyes and sees the judgment in Upa's eyes because we see
Because
that Upa's
Upa's the one that's been spiritually damaged
right.
by the
And we
interaction
see
with
Upa's
Gordon.
judgment as his eyebrows come down in furrow and he's looking at him.
Mm-hmm.
And Tao thinks that Goku can't see his spirit, but he
Because
doesn't
he's turned
know.
away, yeah.
But he doesn't know that Goku is seeing him through Upa. And so this time it's like when he threw the rock at Upa, right? He throws the projectile. And what he doesn't know is that this time Goku has mapped his malice onto his behavior and returns it right back at him and kills him.
Mm-hmm.
It's so succinct in the way that they do it. It's perfect.
It is perfect, and it has to be Tao that kills himself here, because Goku is let's say in the process of integrating that malice.
And Tao does receive that enlightenment, right? We see it on his face right as he dies. His
Right
eyes are
as he
popping out
dies.
of his head
Yep.
practically, and they're wide open, and then the light burns him away, right?
Yep.
And that's to say that that enlightenment will come for you.
Mm-hmm. And it's come back.
It'll be
It's
dished out
come
by the
under roost.
hero
And especially
ultimately.
since it's a manipulation, like we were saying last time, of that technological, because he uses a capsule to pull out the grenade, right? And,
Right.
like, use it against Goku, as it's not something that's a spiritual weapon at all. It's really just a destructive. It's almost in line with what he is in a technological sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so when he blows up by it, it's his own malice that's destroying him, and it's the hero turning it back on him. Now, where we go from here with Goku will be very interesting, but this is his defeat of this spirit of adversarial malice. Think we're still good? Yep, we're still good. Wanted to check again. So, at Red Ribbon headquarters, Red and Black notice the tracker they put on Tao's belt has stopped transmitting. There's a little hint of what might be happening if one has the eyes to see it.
Right. So this is a little bit complicated, right? We kind of dug into this before. It's interesting because Red is able to map. He's able to see where the malice he's purchased is and what it see its existence out there, right? So he doesn't really grasp it. It's not really his own malice, but he at least has the awareness of it, right?
So, and this is why I wanted to say again why I think Red is a very envious spirit, because envy can almost employ malice or summon malice temporarily, right?
It's an unearned
Think about
malice
what
in a
envy
sense,
is,
yeah.
right? Exactly. What envy is when that comes to a boiling point, it can produce malice.
Hmm. It can cause you
But
to act
not permanent.
maliciously, right?
It's not like a
Right. Well, that's to say
longevity thing.
if you are envious of somebody else, you will find yourself first wanting what they have, but later wanting them not to have it.
And finding malice at your disposal.
Right. Maliciously wanting to tear down the
And so
person
that's
rather than
why
elevate
those
yourself.
resources that Red has, and that's why I was saying I was thinking
Hmm.
about it a lot, and I
Yeah.
wanted to figure out exactly what Red is. And so, and we'll continue talking about Red shortly. At Kame House, though, Bulma has finished building the radar that resists the jammer. Roshi suggests they all take a bath together to celebrate, and Bulma says that sounds great, tricking Roshi and then striking him down. So this is an expansion because Bulma is now able to integrate that which is let's say in introducing or instantiating itself in Kame House with Roshi to her, and she's taking that knowledge and integrating it into the way that she acts with Roshi. And we see her just react with Roshi and act with Roshi like this entire episode.
Right, and this specifically is to say that now she can see herself through Roshi, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now she understands what Roshi sees and is able to manipulate that, give him the response that he expects, or I should say that he wants to have, right? And then basically manipulate his interpretation, or you could say, um, turn his attention towards something false based on her understanding of him, uh, and then actually be able to react in a way that
That puts her in the position of power over Roshi. It's not just a physical thing.
right,
She's
it's not a
actually shown
reaction, it's actually an understanding, like, she's really grasped him, right?
she's shown an understanding of his spirit such that she is almost making fun of him
Right, and this changes the dynamic, I think, between Bulma and Roshi
forever.
forever.
Yeah, I agree. Nope, definitely.
That is how Bulma is able to create the dragon radar that resists the jammer, which is to say that now she also has been able to map
She learns the
the
same
higher
lesson that
perspective.
Goku learns
Yes,
in her archetypal female way, where Goku's learning it with the archetypal heroic way, right?
right.
They're on similar paths. And that's to say that Bulma's a strong female character just because she's uh preyed upon here by Roshi doesn't mean that that's what the show is saying.
Right, it's saying the opposite, right? It's
Exactly.
saying that she should be able to interpret
And as she's able to
this the
do
proper
that
way.
and stand up to Roshi in that way, right? She is becoming stronger as a person.
And this is why we had mentioned before, she's just been here, right? She's been here on
Yes.
Roshi's
She
Island all
has
this
to be
time
here still. She
because she
can't
needs to
return
be
yet.
able to integrate this type of wisdom, right? But in her own way. And her own way might not be the same way that Goku would, right?
Well, it shouldn't be, I would say.
Yeah.
So at back at the tower's base, though, Goku's Dragon Radar is also working. So he sees that there are 2 Dragon Balls nearby, and he realizes it must be where the rest of the Red Ribbon soldiers are. He says he'll go get the Dragon Balls and beat them up while he's at it. Goku straps the Noibo onto his back and climbs onto the Nimbus, promising he'll return to revive Bora.
I like that Goku says that he'll beat him up while he's at it, and we
Yes.
see that he's not going there to beat them up, but that he would like to
It's
inflict that
part of it.
malice against them, right?
He now knows that malice. He's like, this is pretty powerful, right? Let me go. Maybe I'll just and it's a temptation almost too.
Hmm.
And I think that's why it's incorporated the way it is with Goku on how he's interacts first with it and then is going to exhibit some of it in the next couple episodes.
Right. I like that though because this is what he's been able to internalize from Tao is that it would be good to beat up these red ribbon soldiers because of how bad they are. And we see him kind of
Yes.
acting along those lines earlier, whenever Bulma sort of reacted to Bulma's attack of the 2 men who were going to assault her by saying, "Oh, well, they were just perverts," right? But Goku already was oriented in the way that he would lash out against them violently or
He doesn't
maliciously
kill them
almost.
though. He
He
just
doesn't
destroys their
right, he doesn't
planes, right?
deliberately kill them, but then even back then we see that hint that Bulma's like, "Whoa, hang on a second."
Mm-hmm.
Like that seems like an over the top response. But now that Goku has
The
fully
zealousness, right?
integrated that judgment, right? That Korin is able to have as well, that in the way that he judged Tao, he's now ready to go and judge these red ribbon soldiers. And I like that Goku looks different after he stands up. Like you can see him there, right? His face looks different.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like how Dr. Peterson talks about you can see it in somebody whenever they have integrated that shadow element, whenever they know
Even when
that
they've experienced it, because I wouldn't say Goku has integrated it yet. I
not
think he
fully,
still has
right?
some lessons to learn, but he's been initiated.
Right. But you can see the maturing on his
No,
face in that
definitely, yeah.
sense and the
But that's what I'm
seriousness
saying.
of his
Just the
eyes.
experience of some of these shadow-like events will create that maturity in the face, right?
Right.
You can have that hardening through that experience, and Goku is going to be maturing even more
Right. And
as we see.
it's to say though, I can't remember the exact quote, but it's something along the lines of until you realize the depths of how bad you could be, you don't know truly how good you could be.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Yep.
elevating Goku's spirit by recognizing his ability to be judgmental in that sense towards something and
And now it's how
to
he
act
uses
out
that
against it.
knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Now we're gonna see that. Okay, and so he does promise Bora that he's gonna return and revive Bora.
And
He
he has the
promises to do both.
Noiba again.
Yeah, the
So
Noibo. He takes the Noibo, yes. And this is significant because we haven't seen him with it since it fell off of him. Um,
Well, he did
Well, he
use
did
it
use it.
against
Yeah, yeah,
Tao to
yeah.
break the sword, but then immediately cast it aside, right, and
Right, to
said that
say he's not going to use that extension of malice
right, it has to
against
be
humanity.
himself that defeated him, right? And so now he takes the Noibo and says, "Okay, they're using technology against me, right? They're using an extension of themselves and what they've sort of inherited from the spirit that's animated them, let's say."
They're
So
using
he
weapons.
right.
What weapons do I have as the hero?
And so as the hero,
This
he
huge
has
cudgel.
he has the he has the pole that extends forever.
Yeah. And that is representative of that ancestral wisdom that all the Red Ribbon soldiers, clearly have forsaken. And so
Exactly.
he's able to beat them over the head with it, literally,
Mhm.
in what we're going to see next episode. So I think that brings us neatly to the end.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you have anything else?
No, other than still feels like my favorite episode.
It's pretty good. It's pretty damn
When I
good.
realized how Bulma's story ties into this, I was like, man, I really took that for granted before.
Yeah, you don't really you're like, "Oh, it's just a side. This is the B plot."
It's like, man, I just got to keep watching all this filler with Bulma getting creeped on,
None of it's
all
filler.
this fan service.
Anyways, so if you liked what you heard, give us a like. If you didn't like what you heard, give us a dislike, I guess. You can't even see them now. We'd appreciate a comment more so we could engage with it. And we could address it on a future episode, obviously. Give us a subscribe. We're also on Rumble. Give us a subscribe. We do release episodes Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday on YouTube, and Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for Rumble, possibly Odyssey in the near future. BitChute's a little weird. I'm thinking about using it again, but it's here and there. So, with all that being said, I'm your host on the Left Owl.
I'm your host on the right, Brock.
We hope you guys have a good night.
I told you I wasn't going to go easy on you. You're on your own.
You can't leave me. That's cruel.
Hey, guess what? Sometimes, kid, life is cruel. And don't you forget it.